Hey everyone. So for question one, the two reasons that I had listed as to why vendors and teams thought that it was a good idea to invest, I put that they felt that it would cut down on labor costs, and that also it would reduce the lines of people waiting for beer. So lines would be reduced, it would go quicker and smoother. And then for question two, the four primary reasons that the kiosks failed right off the bat. The first one was the fees to the credit card companies, and nobody really wants to pay the fees, the extra percentage, and that's something I don't think that the stadiums really took into account. And then also refrigeration. It was hard to control the refrigeration systems with the weather. And then interaction. Humans crave that interaction. And so when it's going up and ordering your food, hey, how are you? Simple little things. Interaction is huge. So that was a big one. And then another one was that self-serve doesn't necessarily mean clean. So trays would be a mess. There'd be probably foam everywhere, considering that it's beer. For question three, where did the use of the portable kiosk seem to work best and why? In the article, it talks about more social events like the Kentucky Derby and the Ryder Cup. It's a more social setting as opposed to sporting events where fans just want to go back to their seats. So in the Kentucky Derby setting specifically, it's a lot more group oriented. You're standing, you're sitting, but you're in a group and you're communicating with your peers while it's going on. So it's a little less focus driven. And then question four, I put that I could see, well, in the article specifically, it talks about Aramark evolving, and that soft drinks, those kiosks do fairly well. And then as far as in the future, I think I listed more than three, but a couple of things that concessionaires would need to know before putting these kiosks back. I think that they would need to figure out refrigeration, whether or not that is feasible, that they can make it work, that it's cost effective in doing so. Another thing would be to find out where in the stadium that those kiosks would be most successful. Is it going to be more successful in the middle of the stadium? Is it going to be more successful at the entrances, right before the ramps to go into the seating area? It just kind of depends on the stadium itself, and I think that that's important. And then another thing that I had noticed too was maintenance costs. How much is it going to cost the stadium and the staff to regulate these machines? How much is it going to cost to clean them? How much is it going to cost to refill the taps and all that good stuff? So I think that those are three really big things. But another thing that I had wanted to point out would be that they would need to know how much revenue they get from that. Do they actually get more revenue from the self-serve kiosks than with somebody going up to a worker and saying, I'd like this, this, and this? Do they get more revenue having that self-serve line than they do without the self-serve? And then for question five, given my responses, I think that a self-serve kiosk in 10 years would look like, it would probably be a lot more upgraded, I think. I think that the kiosks that they put into place currently, that they removed and everything, I think that they gave them a lot of information that they needed to make these better. That being said, I think that it might be, oh goodness, I think that with it being so upgraded, potentially there's an attendant with it, not necessarily somebody who is pouring the beer maybe, but somebody who can explain, these are the kinds of beers we have on tap. You need to press how many ounces you want. Is there a limit to how many ounces and how much beer that one person can get off of a purchase? And then how many times can you purchase from a self-serve line? And how do you regulate that intoxication? And then I also think that potentially there's a self-cleaning option on those. So every few hours, it's just a quick shut down this line, clean this one, shut down that line, clean this one. Not really sure how that would look, but maybe making that efficient. And then another thing would be, what about a self-pour option? So if I went up to this machine, I wouldn't necessarily be pulling the lever myself, that it would pour it for me, and it would make sure that it had that perfect amount of foam. It wasn't messy, it wasn't overflowing. So yeah, that's kind of where I see that going. And then another thing with that would be potentially working with the banks to make the credit card fees lessened. 3.5% is quite a chunk, so I wonder if maybe that they could bring that down a little bit, but that's probably a whole nother class. And then lastly, where do I see this? I would think that it would belong more in social sports, those kinds of events. So more arenas instead of stadium type settings, because they're weather regulated, they're inside, not necessarily that seats are closer or anything like that, but I think it's a completely different atmosphere being inside versus out. And then also where I think that they would belong in the venue, I would think in a busy, high traffic area that hits all areas, like all aspects for fans. So something that would be quick, efficient, and still has that social interaction aspect. So like I mentioned earlier, at, right before the ramps to go into the seating, 10, 20 feet from the bathrooms, somewhere convenient for fans.